Why are bananas funny? So because of their phallic nature, or because the peels are slippery? Has anybody ever slipped on a banana peel? Once I kind of stepped on a banana peel. I can't remember what the exact context for that was, and it was kind of slippery. Like, I don't know, in the 50s or maybe earlier in the 20s, humans engaged in activities that resulted in banana peels being strewn all over the place. Like art imitating life, or does life imitate art? That is the question. All those bananas were pretty tasty. I don't know if you remember, a couple of years ago, some news article came out. It was a specific type of banana that was about to become extinct. Who would have thought? We're often thinking about like the extinction of animal species, like, okay, there are only, I don't know. I don't want to speak of tigers because everybody's kind of going crazy about Tiger King. I haven't finished the whole thing, but kind of brutal to watch. I was confronted too much with like the potential suffering of these animals because of these fools who are, I don't know, and these little stupid little wars. They're feeding all these animals shit. It's just too troubling to watch. So anyway, that means I didn't want to bring up tigers, being like the species that are about to become extinct. Speaking several languages is also kind of a crazy thing, because you realize that one language tends to cannibalize the other in this kind of strange circle of infinite cannibalization, and you end up unable to speak any language properly. I don't know, maybe if you just speak one language, the same thing happens with the same language cannibalizes itself, and you're only speaking with, as I do, with like, it's like, you know, like, you know, like. Language is a cannibal. It's not just a virus from outer space. Going back to my point, extinction of fruit, that's not something you think of that often. What would we do without bananas? They get a bad rap for some reason. But targeted ads are kind of the stupidest thing, and maybe that is actually very effective. I always thought it was kind of stupid, but you'll go online, you look something up, say I look at a convex mirror, I will actively look for it, find one, and I'll be like, oh, maybe I'll buy it later, or maybe I even will buy it. And then later on I'm browsing some other page and I get an ad for that exact same thing. I feel that's kind of stupid. I mean, the cool thing would be more like, oh, the algorithm figures out you like convex mirrors because you would actually secretly like to burn all the spiders that come out in the spring in your house with a magnifying glass so you don't have to touch them, and that's your fascination with convex glass. So you get an ad for a magnifying glass, then subconsciously you realize this, even though on the surface you don't know, and you go out and you buy that magnifying glass. That would be effective advertising, not just like showing me the thing that I already know I wanted. What the hell was I saying? I think I'm gonna try to rewind here and see. Okay. I remembered what I was gonna say. It was about bananas. Bananas are actually pretty cool. I started speaking about ads because very often you get ads randomly targeted at you, and for some reason on kind of shittier news sites, you very often get like, never eat these 7 foods or something like this. And it's always about losing weight. And I don't know what searches or what I say in my private life when my phone is listening to me that makes the internet think that I want to lose weight. If anything, I want to like gain muscle mass, like be a huge guy. But yeah, very often it's like, you should never eat bananas. And I never really clicked on these links to see what the logic was, but I don't know. Eat these 6 superfruits or something like that. What about bananas? I have a lot of bodybuilder friends. I'm trying to put this on the floor so I don't slip on it later. In my bodybuilding community, which I'm an active member of, if you're going to be put in a situation or you're going to an event where you need to show your muscles, what you really need to do to make them pop is eat a banana. I also like putting them in smoothies too. I mean, with a raspberry, banana. But yeah, I don't know. I think this whole situation right now is just kind of bananas. Let's just jump into some reading. Poetry and the Temptation of the End of the World by Georges Bataille. Of all those who can scan the horizon or the skies to decipher the signs of what is to come, there can be few who have subjected them to a more persistent interrogation and with a greater avidity for discovery than André Breton. But perhaps no one has recognized as clearly as he the significance of this sign that has recently appeared, the threat of an annihilation of the world and of a definitive night that would turn the universe into a non-universe. A theater where the performance has just ended. If civilizations had only considered themselves to be more moral, he writes, assuming Valerie's sonorous tone, they would have taken consolation and learned from the fact. A ray of light subsisted. But suppose reality in its entirety enters into a night in a flash of lightning. Suppose the earth, at the mercy of a failure in the administration of explosives, shattered in a way that apparently happens at times in the depths of the sky when a world fragments, leaving in its wake only a long and immense flash that will never come to our attention. As a matter of fact, science cannot, without a new order of things, take this possibility into account, or at least it considers the possibility so remote that it can practically be ignored. After all, the fact is that it exists, and if it is no more alarming today than the risk of a more general catastrophe, not provoked by man's hand, it has become possible to talk about it. Otherwise, a future that one imagines near at hand risks opening wide the door that today is only half open. The scientists do not yet tremble for fear that they may themselves cause the globe to explode. But the problem is presented and could be resolved. From that moment, it is unlikely that the Earth would survive. Whether such an end would exactly be universal night is another matter. In one respect, would not a world in which there was no form of consciousness have that value which consciousness tends to destroy, that of poetry? One must also say that science today recognizes through experience what the theory yesterday tended to deny, the possibility of numerous systems in the universe and, in consequence, other humanities and other consciousnesses. Be that as it may, the antagonism between poetry and consciousness, the latter connected to reason, is at the heart of our lives. And faced with the possibility of this night descending over us, Breton is led to take into account a poetic tradition whose authenticity is not in doubt. Do not numerous studies in course of publication establish that for a century they, poets that is, and consequently the most acute modern spirit, have drifted towards the temptation of the end of the world? In fact, there can be no doubt whatsoever that the state of mind of men like Nerval, Borel, Baudelaire, Cros, Rimbaud, Lautréamont, Mallarmé, whose sensibility, for the most part, has conditioned ours, was governed by the old Manichaeism and Sade. Breton cites Baudelaire. To amuse myself, I calculate to myself whether a prodigious mass of stone, marble, statues, and walls crashing down together would be stained by the multitude of brains, human flesh, and broken bones. One should also point out that poets do not seem to be the only people to experience this poetic temptation of the end of the world. It is something that equally concerns scholars. One of them, who works on atomic research, told me that although he personally might find himself beyond temptation, he took it for granted that one day or another a physicist would succumb. To have such a monstrous possibility available would go to the head and would finally, he said, be too much to resist. It was apparently like being shot from a lower angle is kind of an unflattering image. At some point I was watching some interview with some model and saying that like events for civilians, and by civilians I mean like Hollywood stuff where there are a bunch of shorties. Photographers were at a lower height to be able to take pictures of like Tom Cruise and all those other tiny dudes. And that lower angle was really terrible for the models. They looked like a bunch of freaks. And when it's like a model event, photographers are like standing on ladders and stuff to get a bit higher or at eye level, and that makes a huge difference. Of course, if you don't know how to pose and are not like super gorge, probably still be in trouble. Georges Bataille writing some stuff in the 40s. It's going to make you take a more serious look at the possibility of all these conspiracy theories. I mean, I don't let myself get persuaded by conspiracy theories because more often than not, they kind of imply coordinating the capacities of many individuals and assuming that they all are very highly intelligent, which conspiracy theories normally fall by their own weight. Of course, if we want to vilify China. So Georges Bataille was writing saying that a man of science back in the day could see how the temptation, fascination for the end of the world would be too much to resist for a scientist who could very easily come to have the means to plunge the world into endless night. That reminds me of William Blake. Not because I've read William Blake, it's because I saw Jim Jarmusch's Dead Man in the character Nobody, who was a huge William Blake fan, was often quoting William Blake throughout the movie, and I used to love that movie. It's like, every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delights, some are born to endless night. Or something like that, I don't know. A disgruntled scientist could very easily succumb to the temptation to just end the world. Could very likely just be some dude being like, you know what, fuck it. Now, I'm not saying that is the case, but the possibility is not necessarily as far-fetched as one might think it is. So you just have to look at everything too. Sorry, I'm not wearing my classical reading attire. I don't wear that all the time. Interesting to think about these fascinations with the end of the world when we're actually facing a situation. Do we go full bleak, or do we maybe move to more hopeful, luminous ideas? I mean, on the one hand, you have like the whole troll movement. I don't know, it came from an interesting moment, I think 10, 20, let's say 20 years ago. Postmodernity was really kind of in vogue in a kind of more, it was very much linked to irony, and irony was very much appreciated in the arts. And I think this going on Unfettered, it went to some kind of unfortunate extremes. One of them, amongst others, being the whole troll movement online, the troll movement. The troll president being, I don't know. I remember the first book I read, Bataille. It was this novel. And at the time, I thought it was like Marquis de Sade on steroids, although I'd never really read Marquis de Sade until later, so Marquis de Sade is still pretty fucked up. Spirals of violence, striving for meaninglessness. I mean, I just have like vague memories of it, and I just remember at some point they killed a priest and they put an eyeball into his asshole. A great image. But it's kind of interesting to think how these intellectuals carried out these exercises, these mental gymnastics, pushing images to these kind of extremes of violence in their search for intellectual enlightenment. The other side to this thing is how this kind of festers in the digital landscape of the internet and all the kind of terrible things that leads to. I mean, and I'm not saying it's the same thing at all, because it's not, and I still think it's very important to challenge taboos as part of artistic and intellectual activity. But there's an interesting balance to be found with pragmatic reality, and then of course we need to take into consideration mental health and criminality and what all these things mean. And it's not necessarily a super clear-cut distinction. Like, I don't know, this situation is taking us to reflect a lot of the idea of where lines lie. Where are the lines between one concept and another? And we often think of things being clear-cut. I don't know if we often think of it, but we operate in a way that assumes these things being clear-cut. Like, you know what is against the law, what is not against the law. But then when we analyze these things, we see that the liminal spaces are these kind of mysterious, evasive blurs, and it becomes very difficult and even problematic to say this is the line, this is the division. And I think that's maybe why there's this fascination with these ideas. Like, there's the Pilates champ has arrived, keeping the world fit, one screen at a time. I'm actually her slave. My task during the pandemic is just to make her juice.
To me?
Yeah. Maybe for next reading, we'll explore this concept, how we're our own slaves. Ah, there he is, the baby. He's so camera shy lately, doesn't he? He never comes and visits me. You're sleeping. I'm gonna have to censor this from the video. Do you love me, Billy Joe? Do you love me, Billy Joe? Show your balancing skills, Billy. It's like Cat du Soleil.
Cat du Soleil.
Bum, 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 bum. That's a good workout too, actually. Little 12-pound cat.